Thank you. Yes, my name is Myriam Frejus. I work at Électricité de France Research and Development. I'm a UX researcher, and for the study I'm going to present, we carried it out with Dounia Lahoual, a colleague of mine, also from EDF. In her study, we were interested in how people appropriate connected objects, and more precisely, vocal assistants. As you certainly know, vocal interaction has attained its maturity phase and often appears as a renewal of man-machine interaction. More than 2.5 million digital vocal assistants have been installed worldwide, generating user expectations of fluidity, simplicity, and speed of use. Several studies, of course, have reported the overall great satisfaction of users. However, vocal interactions remain problematic. Vocal assistants produce an illusion of natural conversation, but users often have to repair and adapt to the system through reformulation, simplification, or hyper-enunciation. Users reduce their scope of actions to the simplest tasks with a low risk of failure, while they were expecting intelligent contextual understanding. There's clearly a gap between user expectations and the real capabilities of these devices. Moreover, users are also required to do additional work to understand malfunctions and try to repair control failures. So, our study, we wanted to shed light on these difficulties and on their impact on users' activities. How do people supervise vocal assistants in natural contexts? What are the impacts on other activities? What recommendations for interaction design can we offer? So I will present results. It's a qualitative and user-centered study. This study was aiming at understanding the context of vocal assistance use. In this study, we saw people using Siri, Google Assistant, Mini Google Home, Amazon Echo Show, and Echo. The method. We first conducted semi-structured interviews with 13 participants from 6 different households. We then installed mini video cameras, as you can see on the picture, in several areas in 3 volunteer homes. It was in the living room, kitchen, hallway, and car interior. We wanted to observe the real use of vocal assistant and connected objects in natural situations. And last, video clips considered relevant from my point of view, from the researcher's viewpoint. Interaction with the vocal assistant, difficulties of use and description of activities, were selected and then viewed with the participants so that they could make first-party comments on their activities. It's a way to catch their own points of view when they were doing things. And after all, of course, the interview were transcribed and analyzed. Her results. The first result we observed is that there is an activity of supervision and verification. This activity has several steps. In the first step of visual and auditory verification, users check whether the assistant is activated to be sure of the right moment for making a request. They observe whether the vocal assistant is listening or has finished speaking. If there's a problem of voice recognition or a wrong interpretation, the user then adapts with a language rectification. They repeat, rephrase, clarify by changing phrases or keywords. They enunciate more carefully, speak more loudly, more slowly, or shorten the command. The third step implies physical involvement. Users engage their bodies through movement and posture. They turn towards the vocal assistant, approach it, and look closely at it. The user has to interrupt the course of his domestic activity. It suggests an upcoming diagnostic activity. They change their activity in order to focus exclusively on the failure, and activities are no longer exclusively vocal. So let's see an example from our data. The people you will see are French, living in France. They are using Amazon Echo. They use the US version because they have lived in the US. When they speak French, we will have subtitles. I hope everybody will succeed in watching it in the back. Let's see it.
Alexa, what is the definition of laid back?
Laid back is usually defined as unhurried and relaxed.
Alexa, can you repeat please? Alexa, repeat please. Alexa, change the channel to train. Alexa, what is the weather forecast for tomorrow?
With a high of 25 degrees and a low of 17 degrees.
Alexa, turn on bookshelf.
Okay.
Alexa, mute TV. Alexa, unmute TV. Alexa, change channel to 2.
Is that 2 o'clock in the morning or in the afternoon?
Alexa, change channel to 2.
L'enseignement a été extrêmement rapide, mis en
Alexa, what is in my calendar?
Here are the next 4 lists.
Alexa, can you give me the definition of laid back?
Back to You, From 13 Reasons Why One Season to Soundtrack par Selena Gomez sur Spotify.
N'importe quoi, tu vas dire. Et Alexa, faut arrêter de fumer, hein.
Okay. So you saw what I meant. People turning, changing the posture, stopping activity, etc. When the supervision and verification activity has failed, like sometimes, an activity of diagnosis and problem solving occurs. The user first has to understand the types of failures that may have occurred. The problem solving activity presupposes exploring potential solutions. This may involve other systems, such as a smartphone application, to check the history of the conversation, for example. So this activity consists in making hypotheses, testing them, and looking for solutions. But there's also a positive aspect of problem solving. On the positive side, the user develops knowledge in action and expertise about his device. It can map the system capabilities and limitations. When it's a collective activity, it often has a positive outcome. So we'll see just after a collective activity of problem resolution. Let's see it in a car. We've got family, the father and his 2 kids, a son and a daughter, and the driver wants to call his wife. He is using Siri. His wife's called Patricia.
Dis Siri, appelle Patricia sur ce portable. Appelle Patricia sur son portable.
Siri, appelle Patricia sur son portable.
Sinon je te casse la figure.
Sinon, je te casse la figure.
Mais faut appuyer sur le... Siri, appelle Patricia. Siri, appelle Patricia sur son portable.
Taisez-vous. Dis Siri, appelle Patricia sur son téléphone portable.
Faut fermer les fenêtres peut-être parce que... Bah vas-y, recommence.
Dis Siri.
Pardon?
Ah pardon, non, il n'y a pas de mal.
Appelle Patricia. Appelle. Il a un bug ton Siri.
Dis Siri, appelle Patricia sur son portable.
Okay. So the video lasts 1 minute, but in the real life it was 2 minutes and a half. Okay, so everybody was focused on the problem resolution, and I'm not sure that the driver was still really driving from his point of view. That's the problem. In that case, for example, the control activity becomes the top priority. Assistance activities prevent the users from carrying out other tasks simultaneously. Also, it's supposed to be one of the best attributes of the vocal assistance. So, of course, some users perceive this experience as quite negative. They push users to return to conventional devices, for example, turning on the radio instead of the vocal assistant. So, it seems quite negative, but in fact, it's interesting to note that despite the difficulties that users encountered and the extra activity that was generated, most of the participants we interviewed continued to use and accept the system. It was 9 upon the 13 participants. However imperfect the interaction is, we found 2 main reasons to be confident with their appropriation in daily life. The first reason is from the user's point of view. It's what we called a paradox of use. Users forgive and accept mistakes. This is a condition for appropriation. We identified 7 reasons for this. They are described in a paper. I don't have time now. The second reason is related to design improvement, and this reason is on our side as designers. Difficulties using the vocal assistance were mainly related to issues of intelligibility. So we need to improve it, and improving intelligibility is possible by strengthening the system ability to make problem visible. It's also possible by designing vocal interaction around problem solving, and it doesn't exist yet. And it's possible by developing system accountability. I mean, informing users the state of the system, how it works, etc. And at least it's possible through making invisible intelligence visible. I mean, showing system improvements. It was very important for the people, for the users, to see the improvement, because they bought something intelligent and they wanted to see how it improves. And if it improves, it's fine for them. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Oh, thank you again. Thanks for the great talk. I'm Donald Millen from Stockholm University, and that's really interesting work. I'd really like to see more from this data set. But one question I have was, you showed problems with resolutions, was there anything you saw about when queries were just abandoned, when they gave up?
So I want to be sure I understood. What do you want to know when they abandon? We saw people abandon, yes.
Yes, you talked about how they repaired, but did you see any tells or any specifics about what happened to make them abandon a query completely rather than attempt to repair?
Well, they abandoned when they didn't see any improvement, okay? And most often when they had another way to do the same thing. I talked about traditional devices, for example, the radio. If you always use your vocal assistant for the radio and that you never succeed in using it, okay, you go back to the radio, okay? So most of the time they keep using it because they developed routines about that and that it's no more possible to do on another way. Did I answer? Yes.
Hi, thanks for your talk. So I'm Lilian, University College Dublin. Could you tell us a little bit more about the demographics of the participants, the people you were evaluating?
I didn't hear
the demographics of the participants, please.
Okay. I was waiting for it. Okay. So we've got people, mostly it was couples at home, okay, man and a woman. The oldest was 52, and we had teens. And for the interviews, we had teens and the parents. And for the filmed households, we had couples and couple with kids. And the teenagers were also using it. So we made self-confrontation on videos also with them. So the details are here and they are in the paper. I've got another slide if you've got another question.
All right, let's thank our speaker.